Okay, so this is Unit 3.1, which is about the role of human resources. Before we start, there are two key words that we need to know. The first is human resources and the second is human resource plan. So, human resources are the workers employed by a business. That's it, it's the people that are involved in the business. The human resource plan is a plan detailing the work as a business needs, and we're going to go through that in a bit more detail over here. So, a good business needs to think about their human resource plan regularly so that they can try and predict any changes that might affect the business. If good predictions are made, the business will be able to better recruit the workers it needs and be more efficient and then more competitive. Basically, the aim of every business is to be as efficient as it possibly can in order to keep up with competitors, and planning all of this about the people that they have is going to help them to do that. So, the things that they need to consider in their plan. The number of workers needed. Quite self-explanatory. The number needed full-time and part-time. This is important because obviously full-time workers are going to be paid a full-time wage, whereas part-time workers are going to be paid less. However, you need to consider the verses of training, whether you're going to need to employ more part-time workers to fill the roles of part-time workers, that sort of thing. That's a really careful balance to get right. The number of workers on 0-hour contracts. Now, we've discussed 0-hour contracts before, but just to remind you, 0-hour contracts are where a person is employed with no fixed time of work. They have absolutely 0 hours. The company can then call them up and say, actually, we've got a shift for you on Saturday, or we've got a shift for you tomorrow. Do you want to come in? A lot of that is done through agencies. So I used to work for an agency when I was at uni doing catering, and they'd call me up and say, look, we've got an event next Saturday, do you want to work? So that's really good because you haven't got to pay people unless you need them. However, if I, as my 0-hour contract worker, then turn around and say, no, actually I can't work next Saturday, you might not be able to get the staff that you need to complete the shift. The number of contractors. So that's where you don't hire them yourself, you hire them from somebody else. When they'll be needed. Again, really careful to consider because you don't want to pay people unnecessarily if they're not actually needed. Where they'll work. Particularly important if you run an organisation where you've got different offices or different branches in different places. The skills needed. That's about employing the right people for the job, not just employing anybody, but employing somebody who's capable of the job. Management and supervision. Do any of your workers need specific management or supervision? Who are you going to employ to do the management or supervision? Are you going to pay them more? When are you going to need them? Where are you going to need them? Do they need any skills or qualifications? All of those things you need to consider. Age, gender, ethnicity. Now, obviously, you need to be really careful here that you're not discriminating and that you're giving people equal rights to work. However, there are some circumstances where you need people of particular age or gender or ethnicity. For example, if you are employing a Father Christmas to work in your department store over the holidays, you are not going to want a 21-year-old girl. Just not what you need. What you can afford, which kind of links back to the number needed. You might need 100 workers, but if you can only afford 80, it's not going to work out very well. All of this costs time and money to do. Somebody is going to have to sit down and work all of this out, and that person is going to need paying. So this is not a cheap, free, easy thing to do. However, in the long run, it will help the business to become more efficient, which should mean in the long run, it saves money. So when you're thinking about HR and planning HR, things will change and you need to consider those changes in your plan. So firstly, workers may need to be replaced. That could be because they're moving jobs, it could be because they're getting promoted, it could be because they are retiring, but people will change. So you need to consider that cycle. The business may grow or shrink. That could be due to a lot of reasons. That could be because of the actions of your competitors. That could be because of the economy. It could be because you launch a new product. But if the business grows, you're going to need more employees. If the business shrinks, you're going to have to make some people redundant, and then you've got redundancy costs. So all of those things need to be considered. Changes to production. If a new technology comes out and you can produce your product a lot more efficient with machines, you're probably going to change to that. But that means that you're going to have to make people redundant, and that impacts your HR plan because you're not going to need those staff numbers. It could be that that new technology requires you to have a more skilled technology department or ICT department. So you might need to do some more training or find some different workers. Relocation. Businesses do relocate for a variety of reasons. It might be a cost saving thing, it might be that they think they'd work better somewhere else, it might be that they want a bigger premises. You've then got to consider whether to take your existing staff, whether to take all of them, whether to take some of them, whether to make people redundant, whether you want to recruit in the new area. All of those things need to be considered. Budget changes. Often linked to the business growing or shrinking, but the amount of money that you have in your HR plan has an impact on it. And lastly, changes in employment law. For example, if they put up the minimum wage, you're going to have to pay your staff more. So what you can afford becomes a lot less. You're going to have fewer staff members. So in the exam, you might be asked to consider one of these things in a context and how it would affect these. So you need to be able to link these two changes together. I hope that makes sense.